Forgive the rather strange angle of this one. My normal room where I record them is got like really bad electric lighting, and I've moved to the bedroom where there's much brighter lights, and this is my headboard, so I'm actually lying down. It's kind of a bit weird, but anyway. Yeah, I just wanted to do a quick video talking about accessibility of poetry and fiction. I was watching Liv Hooper's Nook booktube site, and it's a very good booktube. I recommend you follow her. I'm going to post the link to it in the description box for this video. But she was saying how there's been a sort of series of articles recently about the accessibility of poetry, and poets themselves are asking, should they make their poetry, or should poetry be more accessible, more sort of reader friendly? And obviously with the sort of rising strength of spoken word and sort of slam poetry, there's sort of been a tendency, the popularity of that, to sort of feed into a slight shift in sort of what poets are producing. And I'm not a poet, with one exception, which I'll come to. But I felt this was exactly the same issues that literature has and can have, and I'm going to respond to this as a writer rather than a normal as a reader. And my response is that writers can write whatever they want, in whatever style they want, at whatever level of accessibility they perceive, in the same way as readers can read whatever they want. And the point is that every writer will find their readers and their market. Now, it may not be a significant size one, and something that's less accessible because it's difficult will probably have fewer readers. But if that's what the writer wants to write, then that's great. I've just realised, because I've got this perched on my knee, as I'm sort of gesticulating, it's bouncing the video camera up and down, which is obviously going to give me vertigo if I keep doing this, or seasickness. So I'm going to hold on to it from here on. So yes, just to restate that, myself as a writer, I write quite difficult stuff, which would be on the spectrum of accessibility, probably on the sort of veering towards the slightly lesser accessible. I don't write page turners, I don't write mass market books, let's put it that way. But that's my choice, and I will find my readers, I will find my market. It will be smaller than Stephen King's market, but I can live with that. I'm sure he can live with it as well, the differential between us. And that's as it should be. And this is a slightly wider application, because last month I read an article written by an American author where she was absolutely laying into readers of this short story that had appeared on the New Yorker, which was fiction, but because of the way it was written, a lot of readers had taken it as non-fiction and had responded on social media as if it was non-fiction. And the author, not the author of the piece, but the author who was responding to it, was incensed by this, and just sort of saying, oh, readers today are not equipped for sort of, literary fiction because they don't have any sort of critical faculties, and the state of literary criticism is declining with the whole sort of Amazon, Kindle, tearing down the walls of sort of elitism and curation and gatekeepers of literature. And her attitude absolutely incensed me, and I wrote a piece standing up for readers in my blog, which I'll post the link to. Again, it's not a video, it's a blog piece. But, this is absolutely sort of phony war going on between writers and readers. I don't mean phony war in the sense of the real phony war of 1939, Second World War, before Germany tried to invade Britain. I mean, it's phony because we all have the same interests at heart, and the market is big enough to sustain all sorts of fiction, all sorts of readers. Readers can read what the hell they like, in the same way as writers can write what the hell they like. And as I say, it's just a question of, hopefully, the readers will find the books that they want to read and satisfy them, and the writers will find the readers who like the stuff they put out. And to me, there's nothing else to it. This is a non-issue. Poetry can hold an internal debate about whether it should make itself accessible, but at the end of the day, it's for each individual poet to make their creative decisions. I suspect that debate is happening because poetry is so difficult to make money from for poets. And maybe one strategy is, well, do I need to shift my my target how I write my poems for a wider target audience or whatever, and that's fine. They're entitled to hold that debate, and they're entitled to draw whatever conclusions they draw. But to me, it was always this way, and nothing's really changed. And writers have to be free to write in the same way as readers have to be free to read and to choose what books they want. And the market, and I'm no fan of the sort of free market, but the market will ultimately decide which ones hook up together. And, that's all there is to it. I'm not a poet. Having said that, I have written recently a poem. And I've submitted it, but it'll probably never get published. It's a regret of mine that I don't have the abilities to be a poet, because I don't have an innate sense of rhythm, which I think is absolutely crucial to be able to write poetry. Now, my poem was a response, as of 2016-2017, to T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which is notoriously a really inaccessible, difficult poem, which some people study at school and more people study at university, but it is widely regarded as an inaccessible poem. I never studied it formally at school. I've just responded to it, having read it several times over the years, and I just wanted to do a modern day response to it. It's a poem basically about sort of spiritual bankruptcy and sort of walking around like the undead, because there's to Eliot's mind, people have sort of lost faith in God. But my version is, on one level, superficially, I think, as sort of literary in its sort of references and its citations, and its sort of how it wraps in actual sort of quotes from authors like Milton and Pope and all of that. But mine is slightly subversive, because I haven't read any of these people. I approached my response to T.S. Eliot's poem, and mine's longer, by the way, more verses. I approached it armed only with Wikipedia, and obviously Eliot's original poem. And I sort of wanted to sort of subversively prove at the same time that I could write something inaccessible, quite dense, probably not as dense as Eliot's, because I'm sure he is in better control of the tools of poetry than I am, but with nothing informing it in terms of, obviously Eliot was brilliantly read, classically trained, and could probably speak or at least read in Latin and Greek and all the sorts of things of classical education, none of which I have. But I wanted to give the appearance in my poem that I did, or at least Wikipedia provided me with a simulacrum of that. Now, obviously, if this doesn't get published anywhere, we'll never know whether I was successful or not. But again, to me, it just sort of tears down this sort of false barrier between inaccessible poetry, The Wasteland, with something that's can be done by anyone armed with Wikipedia, which is what I think I've done. Anyway, we'll see how it turns out. But again, just to restate, in my mind, the reader is never wrong. If they don't like your book, they don't like your book. It's not because they didn't understand it. If they didn't understand it, that is the fault of the writer, not the reader. But equally, the writer can write the book in any way he or she chooses, as difficult or as accessible, as perverse, as controversial in theme, whatever. And it will ultimately judge by how many people want to read it. And to me, there's nothing more to say about this. It's a non-debate. It's a sort of an artificial divide that seems to be sort of trying to drive a wedge between writers and readers for reasons I cannot understand. And that American author who responded by sort of lashing into readers about their lack of critical faculties, I'm ashamed to be in the same profession as her. I haven't read any of her work, but I suspect she's in the literary fiction vein that I am. So, putatively, we're in the same camp, but I'm not in a camp with someone who's just going to attack readers. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say on it, really. I hope this video isn't too jagging about for you and give you sort of seasickness. I think in future I'm probably not going to record any more in this fashion. I will go back to the tried and trusted of having a fixed table and a chair, albeit a swivel chair. But I did want to get a response down sort of immediately after seeing Liv's piece. And this was the only way I could do it. Okay, so till next time, just to give you an idea, the book I'm reading at the moment, I'm about 58 pages in, is called The Spaceman of Bohemia by a first-time Czech-American writer, whose name I cannot remember, forgive me. It is the first book I've ever bought in advance. It took about 8 months before it's actually due to be published, but you could buy it, pre-order it on Amazon. I've never done that before, and because it was so long ago, I couldn't remember why I was so enthusiastic to do that, but having started it, it's brilliant and I'm really enjoying it. And so one of my near future editions will be on this book, and the other, as I mentioned previously, will be on the science fiction writer Jeff Noon. So those will probably be my next 2 videos. So again, till next time, thanks very much.